She had already folded the brochure before she handed it to me, not out of carelessness. Deliberately, the way you fold something you have practiced handing to someone more than once, the way you rehearse a line before a difficult conversation you have already decided you are going to win. Cover read Sunrise Manor Senior Living, and the woman on the front was smiling at a watercolor class she had never chosen for herself, dressed in a soft pink cardigan that someone else had picked out. My daughter slid it across the linen tablecloth with a smile that had been practiced and began the sentence. I would spend the next 23 days dismantling one document at a time. I read the small print in the bottom corner before she finished speaking. $6,200 a month. Funded, she explained gently, by selling my house. The house I had paid off 11 years ago. By the time I reached my car that morning, I had already listed her apartment for sale. This is how quiet women finally speak. Welcome back to True Stories, the tragedies and comedies of life. If any part of what you just heard sounds familiar, you are exactly who I made this for. Drop a comment below and tell me where you are listening from. But before I go any further, I need you to understand something, because what happened to me is not as rare as it should be. Every year in the United States, older adults lose more than $36 billion to financial exploitation. In nearly half of those cases, the person doing the taking is not a stranger at the door. It is someone at the dinner table, someone who knows your coffee order, your doctor's name, the alarm code to your front door. Only 1 in 24 of those cases is ever reported, not because victims are afraid, but because they love the person who hurt them, because they are ashamed, and because no one believes a mother when her own child is telling a different story to every relative in the family group chat. I was almost one of those unreported cases, because the person who tried to erase me was someone I had once built a safe door for. Twice. My name is Margaret Calloway. Most people call me Maggie. I am 68 years old, and I live in a house with a front porch and a maple tree in the yard that turns the color of fire every October, in a small town just outside Columbus, Ohio. I spent 25 years as a certified public accountant, reading tax returns, estate filings, and small business audits for people who trusted me to catch what they missed. I read fine print for a living, and I was good at it. Not the kind of good that wins awards, but the quiet kind where clients came back year after year because they knew nothing slipped past me. My husband Frank died of a heart attack on a Tuesday in February 16 years ago. No warning at all. He was 54. I was 52. There was no plan in this house for that kind of Tuesday, so I made one. I kept the accounting practice running. I paid down the mortgage on my own. I bought one small rental property, then a second. I paid this house off the year I turned 57, and I never told a single soul outside my own files. The motto I kept taped above my desk for 25 years still reads the same. Numbers do not lie. People do. The document is the truth. I never thought I would need the old line at my own kitchen table until last October. October in Ohio has a way of making everything look like it matters more than it does. The maple in my front yard was already deep red that Sunday morning, and the air carried that particular kind of cold that settles into the Midwest in the first weeks of the month, sharp and clean, with a faint sweetness drifting over from the neighbor's apple tree. Claire had chosen the restaurant, and that was the first thing I noticed. She picked Harlow and made the red brick corner place on 5th Street, the same restaurant where I had taken her to celebrate her college graduation 18 years ago. People do not choose places like that by accident. They choose them because those places already belong to a story they want to tell. We had the corner booth. Claire was warmer than usual that morning. She touched my hand twice before we even ordered, which was 2 more times than she had in the past 6 months combined. She asked about my blood pressure, my knees, whether the stairs at home were getting to be too much. Rick sat quietly on his side of the table, which was not unusual. What was unusual was where his eyes kept going. Not to his phone, not to Claire, to the leather bag sitting on the floor beside his feet. A man who is genuinely worried about his mother-in-law looks at the person across from him. A man waiting on paperwork looks at the bag. My granddaughter Sophie, 19 years old and back for the weekend from Ohio State, was sitting right beside me. She was the only one at that table who had hugged me before she sat down, the kind of hug that meant something real. I had also invited my oldest friend Dorothy, though most people call her Dot. We met our freshman year at Ohio University, and she has known me long enough to read a room the moment she walks into it. Claire had not been pleased when I mentioned Dot was coming. She had smiled anyway, the way people smile when they cannot think of a fast enough reason to say no. A across the breadbasket. Dot caught my eye for just a moment. She had seen enough in her life to recognize a table being set for a deal that nobody had agreed to. She knew, and I knew she knew, and that was exactly why I had called her that morning. Coasters always wait until the plates are cleared. I know that from 25 years of sitting across from people who needed time to warm you up before they asked for the thing they had already decided to take. Claire reached into that leather bag the moment the server lifted the last dish, and she pulled out the brochure folded carefully, and deliberately the same one I described at the beginning of this story. Sunrise Manor Senior Living. She slid it across the table with a smile that had been practiced and said the words simply like they were a gift. We toured a beautiful place for you, Mom. You will love the garden. I looked at the photo on the cover first, then at the small print in the bottom right corner. $6,200 a month. I set the brochure down and asked the only reasonable question. Who is paying that exactly? Rick answered without missing a beat. They would figure out the house, he said. Downsize me. It just made sense. And there it was. Not a place. Not something smaller. The house. My house. The one I had paid off 11 years ago. Dot set her coffee cup down on the saucer so slowly, so carefully, that the sound it had made was almost nothing at all. Then Claire leaned forward and lowered her voice, just enough to make sure everyone at the table could still hear every word. You cannot be trusted on your own anymore, Mom. That word, trusted, it landed in the middle of the table the way a fork lands when it slips from someone's hand, sudden and small and impossible to ignore. Sophie went completely still beside me. Rick opened the folder he had been carrying in that bag and began sliding a form toward my side of the table. I looked at the bureau. Sure. I looked at my daughter, and then I picked up my coffee and drank it slowly, the way you drink something when you are not in a hurry, when you already know what you are going to say next. I set the cup back in the saucer without a sound. That is a lovely bro. Sure, I said. Very well folded. I let one beat pass. Then I said the words that pulled the floor out from under every plan they had made without asking me. I already toured your apartment, Claire. Our fork hit the plate. The sound was small and enormous at the same time. What she said. Townhouse on Maple Grove Lane, I answered, pleasant as a Sunday morning. My name is on the deed. It has been on the market since Tuesday. There's a showing Thursday morning. Nobody at that table spoke. I left the brochure where it was, took out my wallet, placed enough cash under my water glass to cover a good tip for the staff, and stood up on my own 2 feet in my own coat in a restaurant that held 18 years of my memories. I have spent years being the one who sits down quietly, I said. I'm done with that chair. The bell above the door rang when I walked out. I did not slam it. I did not look back. The text started at 9 that night. Mom, I'm worried about you. You are confused and not thinking clearly. By midnight, there were 11 of them, each one naming a specific incident, a specific failure of judgment. I sat at my kitchen table and read every message the same way I used to read a contract, not for the feeling, but for the structure. And the structure told me something cold. This was not panic. Panic is messy. Panic repeats itself, circles back, loses its thread. These messages were tidy. Confuse. Hurt yourself. Thomas agrees. 3 phrases placed carefully like exhibit markers set out before a hearing. I had seen this done once in my career. A client of mine lost his home because his son spent 6 months building a paper trail of incidents that had either been invented or stretched far beyond what they were. By the time anyone looked closely, there was a file 3 inches thick describing a decline that had never happened. I sat the phone face down beside the brochure, put the kettle on, and sat in the quiet of my own kitchen, thinking. The calls came through the following week, one after another, as if someone had organized a list. My cousin Paula rang first, her voice warm with a kind of concern that had been borrowed rather than felt. Maggie, she said, Claire mentioned you have been struggling lately. I asked her one question. Did Claire tell you who owns the townhouse? There was a pause long enough to answer itself. She said it was Claire's. Paula finally offered. Did she? I said, and I hung up gently. Thomas called from Denver 2 days later. I do not want to take sides, Mom, he said, which is exactly what people say after they have already chosen one. And do not sign anything, I told him. He said a family meeting was being arranged at my house, that everyone hoped I would come with an open mind. I told him I would be there, and that I would make the coffee. He went quiet for a moment, unsettled by how calm I sounded. He thought I was surrendering. I was loading. The Tuesday before the meeting, I stopped at Kroger on my way home. The store had gone full. Autumn pumpkins stacked near the entrance, Honeycrisp apples lined up along the produce wall in their wooden crates. I had just reached for a bag when I heard Rick's voice from the next aisle over, talking on speaker, unhurried and unguarded. The geriatric angle is cleaner, he was saying. If we go the capacity route, the house follows automatically. The voice on the other end was smooth and practiced, the voice of someone who had said these exact words in many other living rooms. I have done a dozen of these. Doctor signs off, judge does the rest. We just formalize what the family already sees. I stood completely still beside the Apple display and did not move. When Rick turned the corner, he walked directly into my car. Standing beside him was a man in a pressed jacket with a gold lanyard around his neck. Raymond Holly's senior transition specialist. He extended his hand and introduced himself as someone who helped families navigate difficult seasons. You help families list their parents' houses, I said. And you take 15%. His smile did not move at all. That was how I knew he was very good at his work. I pushed my cart to the register. My hands were steady. 2 evenings later, Sophie arrived at my back door, still in her coffee shop apron, her eyes red from crying she had been trying to stop before she knocked. She sat down at my kitchen table and told me she had come home early from her Tuesday shift and had heard something she was never meant to hear. Rick kept a green folder in the bottom drawer of his home office desk, she said, and her voice was trembling as she told me what was inside. Typed entries with dates. June 14th, left stove on Proclair. July 2nd, forgot neighbor's name. August 9th, confused about property ownership. That last one made me laugh, I told her, quietly. Behind the incident log was a guardianship petition with my name and birth date already typed at the top, a judge's signature line left blank and waiting, and behind it a Sunrise Manor admission form dated October 31st with a sticky note in Rick's own handwriting. He had voluntary signature first. Cleaner, if not capacity, wrote by October 31st. Sophie asked me in a voice barely above a whisper what I was going to do. I looked out the kitchen window. The maple tree in the yard had gone completely red. Every single leaf turned, the whole tree burning quietly against the gray October sky. Watch, I said. Wait, sign last. I believe you should always give someone one honest chance before the documents come out. The morning after, Sophie sat at my kitchen table and told me about the green folder. I called Claire. No Rick, no audience, just the two of us. She came that afternoon and sat at the same table where she had done her homework for 15 years. And she did not soften by a single degree. You are 68 and alone, she said, and the house is too much for one person. I manage 3 rental properties, my own taxes, and this house, I told her. And for now is a phrase she might want to examine more carefully. We are trying to get ahead of it, she said. No is a complete sentence, I told her. I have been saying yes to you for 12 years, and I am allowed one no. She stood and picked up her keys. When the doctors agree with me, you will wish you had cooperated. I repeated the word back quietly. When I said, not if, she did not hear the difference. That door closed behind her like a decision already made, and I understood that words were finished between us. The next morning I called Dr. Sarah Chen, 8 years my doctor, and someone who has never once offered me comfort when the truth was more useful. I sat in her office and told her the whole story from the beginning, the brunch, the text messages, Raymond Hollis at Kroger, the green folder with October 31st written in Rick's own handwriting. She pulled out the test forms without asking whether I was ready. 2 hours of evaluation followed: clock drawings, word recall, number sequences, judgment assessments, the kind of examination that favors no one and accepts no excuses. 3 days later, she called with the results. Cognition intact across all domains, she said. No evidence of impairment. I would be comfortable saying that to a judge. You may have to, I told her. The report arrived, sealed, signed, and dated. It was clean. From her office, I drove directly to see Patricia Webb, an estate attorney I had referred clients to for more years than I could count. Patricia is 71 and does not waste a single syllable. She read my situation in 5 minutes flat. They are running a capacity play, she said. Classic. When I described Maple Grove Lane, my name on the deed for 12 years with no transfers and no second name ever added, she went quiet in the particular way. That means a person knows exactly what the papers in front of them are worth. She drafted a revocable trust, a durable power of attorney, and a healthcare directive, all notarized and witnessed before I left her office that afternoon. I named Sophie and Patricia jointly, not Claire, not Thomas. By the time they file anything, Patricia said, every door will already be locked by law. I signed in a steady hand. Frank would have liked you, I told her. You signed last too. The Friday before the meeting, my real estate agent called about Maple Grove Lane. There was an offer, she said. $387,000 cash from a young couple with a toddler. They cried when they saw the kitchen. The agent told me the closing date they requested was November 1st. I hung up and looked at my calendar. October 31st, the family meeting. November 1st, the day that young family would get their keys. The symmetry of it almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. That evening, I took my old leather briefcase from the closet shelf, the one that had traveled with me through 25 tax seasons and every hard conversation I had ever prepared for, and I loaded it at the dining table the way I would prepare for the most important audit of my life. The deed to Maple Grove Lane went in first, then the signed purchase contract, then Dr. Chen's sealed report, then the trust and the power of attorney notarized and bound. And last, on top of everything, I placed a photograph. Claire at 33 standing in the doorway of Maple Grove Lane the day she moved in, her daughter Emma on her hip, both of them crying and laughing at the same moment, because they finally had a door that locked from the inside. I had taken that photograph myself. I bought the door so no one could ever take it from her, I said quietly to the empty kitchen. And now she is trying to take mine. I set the briefcase beside the front door and went to bed. And for the first time in 3 weeks I slept. Thomas arrived before the others, knocking on his own mother's front door the way a person knocks when he is not sure he is still welcome. I poured 2 coffees and we sat at the kitchen table without saying much. He told me he did not think I was losing my mind, and he wanted me to know that. And yet your name was on a group text saying I was declining, I said. I did not write it, he answered. He did not stop it either, I told him. He looked into his cup for a long moment, then said that Claire and Rick were in real money trouble, and that he had just wanted everything to be quieter. Quieter for who, I asked him. He did not answer. You could still choose differently today, I said. In that room. He looked away. I finished my coffee and we went to open the door together. By 2 o'clock my living room held more people than it had seen in years. Claire, Rick, Thomas, 3 cousins, 2 friends from church, and Raymond Hollies with his dark leather portfolio and his gold lanyard. I made coffee for everyone and brought out a plate of cookies because a hostess does not announce her hand before the hand is played. Claire had settled into my own armchair as if it had always been hers. Sophie stood near the window with her arms crossed, and Dot sat at the end of the sofa with the particular stillness of someone who intends to remember everything she hears. Hollies opened his portfolio and spoke first, of course, because that is what people like him are paid to do. He said that my family loved me and had prepared some documents to make things easier, then slid a voluntary transition agreement and a healthcare authorization across the coffee table with the pen placed neatly on top. We just need your signature, he said. Rick added in a flat voice that carried no warmth at all that if I did not sign, they would let the court decide. The room went completely quiet. I looked at the papers. I looked at the pen placed so helpfully, pointing toward the rest of my life in a building I had never chosen. Then I placed both hands on top of my old brown briefcase and spoke clearly. I'm not signing anything today. My hands did not shake. I noticed that. But since everyone is here, I said, let us make a loving plan together. I'm going to give you the other version of the story right here so you can see it with your own eyes. Claire told me not to make a scene. This is not a scene, sweetheart, I said. It is a closing. I have done thousands. I clicked open the briefcase and took out the first document, the deed to Maple Grove Lane, Margaret E. Calloway sovereignty recorded 12 years ago. No transfers, no second name ever. I read it aloud clearly and without hurry. Claire's mouth opened and no sound came out. The listing came next with the signed purchase contract, $387,000 cash, closing November 1st. Then Dr. Chen's sealed report, cognition intact across all domains, no impairment. I held it up toward Hollies and said that his capacity case was a sticky note, and mine had a doctor's seal. Last came the trust documents and the power of attorney notarized and witnessed. Every asset I own is inside a trust the law will not let you touch, I said. I did that 2 weeks ago while you were pre-selecting my room. I folded my hand on top of the briefcase. You cannot move someone who owns the room. Claire stood up, her voice cracking in 2 directions at once. She said I was punishing her, that I wanted my own daughter on the street. I did not raise my voice. I reached into the briefcase one final time and placed the photograph on the table between the deed and the Sunrise Manor brochure. I asked her to look at it before she said another word. It was her own face, 33-years-old Emma on her hip in the doorway of Maple Grove Lane, both of them crying and laughing at the same moment. I bought that door so a man could never take the roof off your daughter's head, I told her. I put it in my name so no court of us could reach it. I never asked you to thank me. I thought love was clearest when it carried no receipt. My voice did not waver. I had promised myself it would not. You took the safety I built for you, I said, and turned it into the blueprint for locking me away. Concern is a gift. You sent me a bill. The room had shifted. Thomas was looking at his own hands. The cousins were very still. At some point, without anyone noticing, the exact moment he left, Raymond Holly's was simply gone. That was how I knew the deal was dead. I stood up in my own living room on my own 2 feet and delivered the only plan that had ever been on the table. I'm staying in this house, I said. The townhouse closes November 1st. I will not be paying anyone's debt, and I will not keep catching people who jumped on purpose. Claire, I love you. I will love you until my last breath. But I am done being the floor you stand on while you reach for my walls. One by one, people gathered their coats. Some offered apologies on the way out, the quiet, embarrassed kind that come too late to matter much but still count for something. After everyone had gone, I slid the Sunrise Manor brochure inside the old listing sheet for Maple Grove Lane and put them both in the recycling bin. Then I placed the deed and the photograph back into the briefcase, clicked it shut, and set it on the bookshelf, where it has stayed ever since. Here's what I know now that I wish I had understood sooner. A quiet woman is not a simple one, and silence was never protection. It was just practice for the moment I finally had to speak. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this story touched something in you, if you have ever been the quiet one that people forgot to ask, leave a word in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you believe that a parent's dignity is never up for a family vote, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to True Stories, the Tragedies, and Comedies of Life. I will see you in the next one.